Skinny fat, not an ideal body type to have. No offense to anybody who is skinny fat, but you might be carrying excess amounts of fat without looking overweight, which can be unhealthy, but more importantly, it's not aesthetic. But don't worry just yet, because I'm gonna teach you how you can go from skinny fat to aesthetic with just 3 simple steps, not only for your self-confidence, but also for your health. And stick around, because the last step is probably the most important of the 3. And without it, the rest of the steps, they're not gonna work as well. I mean, you could skip the last step, but trust me, you don't wanna do that. So when you're skinny fat, the problem isn't that you're fat, although you are, it's that you have a lack of muscle. So the obvious solution for this is to build more muscle. The best way to do that is with resistance training. Now, why is resistance training essential? Well, for one, it helps to offset your body fat percentage. I mean, think about it. The more lean mass that you pack onto your frame, even when your body fat stays the same, the overall percentage of your body's fat will get lower. On top of that, you're just naturally gonna look better. Even if you're still a little bit pudgy, your muscles will still poke through the fat and give you a pretty decent physique early on. Also, having more muscle just naturally increases your metabolism. Resting muscle burns about 6 calories per pound per day. So the more muscle you pack on, the more calories you're gonna burn throughout the day. What exercises should you do to build an aesthetic physique? Now, there's tons of exercises to choose from that can do this, but we wanna focus mainly on the compound movements. By working multiple muscle groups at the same time, you're gonna be building an all-round athletic and aesthetic physique, but also burn more calories at the same time. With that in mind, there are 4 main aspects to what makes up an aesthetic physique. So we wanna pick exercises that tailor to those aspects. Number 1, we have the V-taper. We really wanna pick exercises that focus on vertical pulling, such as the pull-up, to work the lats, and that's what's gonna give us the V-taper, that Dorito look. We also wanna pick some vertical pushing movements, which are gonna help widen our shoulders and really give off those Death Star delts. Number 2 is the chest. Generally, we just want well-rounded upper, middle, lower chest, so we wanna pick exercises that work the entire chest. That could be done with bench press, push-ups, incline bench, elevated push-ups, and dips. And of course, we can't forget the abs when it comes to building an aesthetic physique. Generally, any exercise could be done for the abs and it will be effective. For me, my favorite ab exercises that I think work the abs tremendously well are more isometric exercises, such as the dragon flag or the boat hold. And lastly, we're gonna talk about legs, because we are definitely not skipping leg day, okay? While it's not typically considered the aesthetic part of the physique, usually we talk waist up, they're definitely essential. It not only brings balance to your proportions, helping with the aesthetics, but since legs are such a large muscle group, looking at the glutes, very thick, they're gonna be burning a lot of energy, a lot of glycogen, and that's gonna also help you stay lean, as we mentioned before. Hey, post-production Kevin here. I should mention that even though we're focusing on compound movements, we should also supplement with isolation exercises as well. Specifically for aesthetics, we want to target our side delts, biceps, and triceps, just to enhance these smaller muscles and make our physique pop further. Also, don't train obliques, because sometimes they could grow and make your waist wider and blockier, which is not very aesthetic, but I've heard it work for some people, so you do you and see what you like. Of course, when you're working out for a long time, you'll want to progressively overload, which is just a fancy way to say make the exercise harder than last time. If you're interested in starting resistance training with calisthenics, I'll put a link to my beginner's guide at the top right-hand corner. Of course, it doesn't matter how much energy you burn when you work out if your diet isn't on point. Now, the biggest question that's asked when it comes to getting rid of skinny fat is, do you cut or do you bulk? Well, I'm here to tell you neither. So you don't want to bulk because, well, you don't want to get fatter, but you also don't want to cut because we want to build muscle and we want to preserve as much muscle as we can. That just leaves us with one option: eating at maintenance, meaning eating the same amount of calories that you burn. Now, I did mention that being skinny fat is not an ideal body type, but it may work to your advantage here. Having a higher body fat percentage means you have access to excess energy that can be used to build muscle. So you don't necessarily need to bulk, since the calories you need to build muscle are already on your body. And this is great because since you're skinny fat, you probably haven't worked out or haven't worked out in a while. So when you start to begin, you are going to experience newbie gains, which just means you're going to progress faster. You're going to burn fat and build muscle at the same time. Only once you start to develop a good amount of lean muscle mass can you consider going into a cut to shed the rest of the fat. I would say 6 to 8 weeks of eating at maintenance is a good time frame to start lowering your body fat percentage further, because having a low body fat percentage is one of the main aspects of having an aesthetic physique. Simply put, you can't show off your hard-earned muscles if it's covered in layers of fat. When you do decide to cut, try to aim for about 300 calories below your maintenance. So now that we know how many calories we should be eating, what sort of food should you be eating to go from skinny fat to aesthetic? I believe it's very important to focus on eating lots of high quality protein, things such as fish, meats, eggs, dairy, not only to maximize muscle growth, but will also help you feel more satiated. Generally speaking, you should be eating 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So if you're an 180-pound person, you should be eating 180 grams of protein. Not only is high protein going to help you build muscle, but it's also going to help you preserve the muscle when you finally go into your cut. Now, I think it comes as no surprise, do not eat junk food. At least don't eat too much junk. You should still be eating the foods that you enjoy, but you shouldn't make those a habit and eat them every single day. I would say a general rule of thumb is to have only 10% of your diet be junk foods. Now, it may seem boring, but it helps to eat the same thing every single day. I mean, you don't need to follow this rule, honestly. It's better if you don't. If you have like a variety of foods you can choose from that fit your macros, that's great. But for me, the general structure of my meals are roughly the same, which helps me a lot because I don't have to recalculate the amount of calories, the amount of protein in my meals every single day. The general structure I use is just picking some sort of protein, typically chicken thighs, sometimes it's pork, some form of vegetable to fill me up, and then rice because I mean, look at me. And now for the most important step. The most important step that you definitely should be doing if you want to go from skinny fat to aesthetic is sleep. Now, that may seem anticlimactic, but getting proper sleep is essential for losing fat and building muscle. For one, it helps you to recover from resistance training. If you've ever heard the phrase muscle is built in your sleep, that's pretty correct. When you go to sleep, your body releases human growth hormone, and that's what's stimulating the muscle protein synthesis. So having poor sleep equals poor recovery, which equals poor muscle growth. Not only is it essential for building muscle, but it also helps you to eat less. According to the University of Chicago Medicine, sleep restriction has an effect on appetite regulation that leads to increased food intake and thus puts you at a risk for weight gain over time. In other words, no sleep equals more hungry. More anecdotally, sleep just helps me to feel more motivated every day. If I get a poor night of sleep or I wake up super late, I tend to be a lot lazier throughout the day and I'm less consistent with my diet and especially my workouts. And if consistency is something you struggle with on a day-to-day basis, then you can check out my video on the simplest way to stay consistent right here.